Hi everyone, I'm Kritskiy, but you probably know me better as the founder of the multi-genre project Edexy, which for almost 8 years now has remained true to itself and its principles. After existing for a long time in this electronic music industry, I've accumulated various questions. When you make music in a competitive environment, you need to be ideally prepared for everything. But every person has their own percentage of emotional perception of situations. And the stronger the shocks and disappointments, the more your strength depletes. And I fear my personal reserves have suffered greatly from this in recent years. In today's conversational video, completely non-standard for this channel, which is also a big test for my level of English, I will try to explain from an artist's perspective how the music industry is perceived today. But anyways, I think it's somewhat banal to talk about my accent or bad English. The video is still scripted, you know, and the main thing is that you hear my speech live. Disclaimer: I don't claim full objectivity. Take this as my personal story with its ups and downs, and of course, problems that led my project to temporal decadence. I've worked very hard on this video, so I'll be grateful if you like it. Subscribe to the channel and my page on streaming platforms. Your support has always been valuable to me and remains so. Let's get started. The first thing I want to say, I'm from Russia. So many think I'm from Kazakhstan, and that was done on purpose. I was simply hiding from the negativity poured onto my country, which also called innocent citizens. Take my apologies in advance if this upsets anyone. But several years after the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, I'm no longer afraid to openly state this. There is no point in hiding now, as it simply didn't lead to anything good, so it's better for me to preserve my identity in front of understanding people than to prove to someone that if I'm Russian, it doesn't mean I'm bad at all. Okay, moving on. Now about how I appeared in the music industry, how I intensely began improving my production and moved from a Russian audience to Western one, and how I then had to find myself back at the start, albeit with a new level of skills as an artist and musician, and about how I got into ADM and later became part of it in some circles, but was chewed up, spat out, and left to my own, like at the beginning. You think I'm dramatizing? Well, gradually you will decide for yourselves later. Okay, so in 2018, under the influence of music from Monstercat and NCS, I first started writing my own music. It was much easier than to focus on the production itself, make mistakes, invent and improve time after time. Because when you are at the start line of your journey, you largely detached from what's happening in the industry overall. There is a long road ahead, and initially you don't even know how to simply upload your music to streaming platforms. You release everything unofficially, most for yourself and friends. But if you want more, sooner or later you should gradually pave the way to people, labels and other opportunities that will lead you to the top. However, I never wanted to step our heads on my own success, and perhaps this ultimately prevents me, even after almost 8 years, from reaching that very top. But I don't consider my career completely unsuccessful. On the contrary, in some way I achieved what is inaccessible to many artists due to uniqueness of circumstances and gaining certain connections. However, at the current moment I feel the progress of the social development or popularity of my project, if you will, is an order of magnitude worse than others. But let's go back a bit for now. In 2019, I gained many friends and colleagues, and one of my best friends, you might know him from the projects Wimery and Rich Sender, with whom I'm still together today, instilled great faith in my project then and pointed out that I have good sound quality and interesting ideas. Which is actually funny from current perspective. I don't even know what you saw in me back then, bro. But I hope you're more than happy that you saw potential in me and motivated me to move forward with you and grow. Bolstered my motivation and my own progress, with each passing year I immersed my project more and more into the general ADM stream, And as I clearly remember, 2020 became a turning point for me. Ah yeah, it became a turning point for all of humanity due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Under its impression, I wrote my first truly significant EP called New Decade. It musically reflected the pandemic, growing military conflicts, abnormal heat and fires, and economic imbalance. Or crisis, if you will. This EP is available on all platforms, and if you're interested in kind of retrospective of that time in my vision, I'll be glad if you listen. Strong single tracks also came out, like Redshift, which got a VIP version this year and is currently my strongest work, perhaps. But in my archives I have a lot of new material, even more interesting, which I hope to share with you sooner or later. Next, in those years, 2020 and 2021, I released a lot of different music. My solo release Emerald had a good influence on our local CIS or Russian scene and was even appreciated by American producer Moonboy.
Whoa. Oh shit, that's sick! Bro, this is really good. Hype.
I also held a remix contest for this track, which is why I heard for the first time how other producers interpret my tracks. It was a fun time. Thus I got acquainted with more artists, collaborated with friends and colleagues, particularly with my friend Jazzpunk, who unfortunately doesn't release music that often as me, but we produced 2 tracks with different sounds and vibes. Game Over and Jungle Chill. You're awesome, bro. Know that. I hope someday you can overcome your demo backlog and turn them into full projects. I believe in you. There were other collaborations too, with Wimery and my friend Reist. It would take too much time to list them all, but you can find everything in my discography. And if you wish, support the guys who participated in joint works. Nevertheless, I can highlight one, the most breakthrough work in terms of popularity in 2021. A trap collaboration with Draw Attention, my colleague, called Legacy, which, thanks to one of my colleagues, came out on the label Bread and Butter, which unfortunately seems to be closed now. Moreover, the track was released with direct support from Trap City, and for me then, it was an emotional furor. We gathered around 20,000 streams on platforms and over 100,000 views on the Trap City YouTube channel. And for local artists like me, this was perhaps the loudest success among all other releases. And then I started collaborating more closely with labels on my own initiative. After Legacy, I truly began a kind of expansion onto labels. And looking back at my old releases, I can see that literally every one of my new releases came out on a label of varying size. Frostfire, Base Capital, Monster Wolf Records, Beast Trap, Biophaze Records. I'll come back to the last label later in this video, as it largely became the catalyst for making a full video in English. Just imagine. On one hand, thank you for the motivation, and the other hand, the way you treated me, well, you'll find out soon. Anyways, in 2021 I managed to send a lot more tracks to various labels, and along with rejections also received many positive responses, and also wrote my new EP. Back then, it seems to me that there was almost no bias in EDM industry. Management treated everyone equally and honestly and promoted everyone the same. Yeah, I had no shortage of naivety. Well, when the hardest year for our region came, and subsequently for Europe and the USA, everything has changed. Well, not immediately. 2022. The point of no return. On February 22nd, I released my EP Dystopia 2093, and a couple of days later, our country, Russia, announced the start of the special military operation in Ukraine. I was shocked, especially by how ironically the themes in my mini album intertwined with what started happening in reality. Circumstances forced me to look at my projects through the prism of military conflict, and this irreversibly reflected on me. Moreover, depression and a feeling of hopelessness sometimes reigned in my surroundings. Relationships with labels and artists in Europe and the USA also began to crack. A little for now. From now on, as a Russian-speaking artist, I fell into shadow silent ban simply because I'm Russian? No other reasons were even needed, and despite how many labels started ignoring me and my colleagues, to the point where we subsequently had to list Kazakhstan as our country of residence to play by their rules. I'm still grateful to the few people who handled the situation correctly and clearly separated the military side from the civilian one, but there were too few of them. As a result, was able to release music sent to various labels in 2021, but subsequently contacting most of them was no longer possible. Nevertheless, I want to express respect to the labels that supported me and my colleagues whom I helped, but listing them by name makes no sense, as some of these labels are now non-functional or closed, which is also a problem for music industry in ADM direction. For the sake of fairness, something similar happened among those who decide to reject my work based on my nationality. Let this be a lesson to you. I think nothing happens without a reason. But there was also positive moments. Among the good things in 2022, I released the RGB, my mini EP on Infinity Music, which developed the theme of Emerald track, and I want to express big respect to the label's founder. We recently talked about the situation in the seas, or Russia in my case, and he fully understands how hard it's for artists from my region right now. I appreciate it. And also I wrote a powerful collab with my friend Sonality called Turn to Eternal, which later turned into a separate and the first big album for both of us, Returnal, released by Biophaze Records and later Infinity Music. I also have many good memories with Frostfire, perhaps because they, like their artists, understand the value of creativity and the importance of promotion using available resources. Larger labels, however, approach this, to put it mildly, differently. In the following years, as the situation only worsened, I still managed to save face. Also, I saw how some of my colleagues' projects lost ground, and it was hard to watch, but I didn't give up and planned to release through blood, sweat and tears, continuing trying to rise to the top. As each year the desire grew stronger in me to occupy the niche in heavy electronics as an artist with my own small but cozy community, to gain recognition among other major artists. Some things worked, some didn't. And while hundreds of ignored demos and rejections built up in my inbox email from many labels where I had the desire and opportunity to be featured, I simultaneously started getting quite a lot of attention from the Newgrounds forum, where the music was appreciated by Russian-speaking and English-speaking listeners. And later, some level builders in Geometry Dash started contacting me asking for permission to use my music for creating levels with it. It's crazy. Among the requests were Game Over, Riot, Emerald, Ravers, and etc. And I, of course, agreed, and watching people play custom levels with my music was a great pleasure for me. Thus, one could say that problems in one area, the ADM industry, were compensated by interesting events in another. The forum, which treated my creativity and me warmly, gave me the strength to release my tracks and more confidence to not to be afraid sometimes to move on my own. To be honest, I'm not much of a marketer, so often each release put out independently turned into a failure in terms of activity and commerce. Also, I hardly earn anything from music at all. There is a difference either way. But ironically, it turns out that labels did their job even worse than I did, without large funds for promotion or PR opportunities. And now it's time to talk about the problems that I believe need to be solved. Also, there will be some people who say, well, it's always been like this. The world is unfair and blah blah. It's true, but when you see that certain people actually have the tools to sometimes give someone a chance and they don't use them at all, you want to twirl your finger at your temple, because in the end, a bad result is a problem not only for the artist, but also for the label's earnings. So why lose on both sides? I doubt I'll ever understand this. Sounds rude, right? Maybe, but I'm not going to pity anyone in this video. It's no longer in my interest. At the same time, I have absolutely no complaints against small labels. They are in roughly the same position as no-name artists, which I am even after almost 8 years. But towards labels like Rainlux Music, nothing but questions. In 2023, we participated in compilation with my friend Wimori, who no longer produces electronic music, due to the problems similar to mine, by the way. But in his case, it's harder. Much harder, because conflicts over creativity and audience poaching affect artists much more strongly. And he became a victim of one of these, after which movement and growth slowed down and then stopped. One could say that my project now continues not only my ideas but also his, because I want my friend's creativity to live in some form. This context is essential, because the situation is that also a collaboration with him was taken for the compilation. It was clearly visible no one wanted to promote it, while other tracks got attention without exception. On Spotify, we with our track Nano Machines barely crossed the 1000 stream mark, and even that wasn't without our own efforts. Others had more, much more. Well, that is the bias I mentioned earlier. We are gradually getting the most telling stories where even if your track gets accepted for release, it's too early to choose, even though once that was the pinnacle of dreams, ironically. Electro-Step Network is another example of dismissive work with artists. Firstly, I was immediately told that Spotify was not interesting to them, major platform, it's strange. And there was a real risk that tracks might not get onto that platform, which was very important to me and remains practically the main source for new listeners and my small Western audience. Secondly, these guys also imposed their artwork on my releases, not in the sense that they made the cover themselves. Of course, that sometimes helped to take some work of the artist, but they literally ruined what I made myself by using their project logos on half of the canvas, covering the entire artistic part, which from a design and perception point of view looks extremely cheap. And why ruin your own and others' image? The question will remain unanswered. But after releasing the track Hypernova and the EP Base Mayhem, I preferred not to work with them anymore. Especially since getting questionable promotion only on SoundCloud with bots probably, while ruining the cover art of my release is not the best idea. The next case involves my track A Literal Adventure, an experimental glitch hop work blending chiptune and synthwave styles. The label Glitch Hop community took the track and I thought everything would be fine, as they arguably the best representative for this genre. But whether time take its toll, or whether it matters who exactly they releases, or maybe both factors played a role, the result was I got less than 300 streams on my track, zero activity and no new audience. All reactions to the new release came from my followers on Newgrounds and my other social networks. Turns out I could have released it myself. There was no difference. Going back to what I said earlier, what's the point of ruining the result for both yourself and the artist, when you could have profited on both sides? That exact case. I also remember who a few months later they sent me royalties, 87 cents. I didn't even know how to react. I just said they should not bother transferring this sum. This will probably remain one of the strangest cases in my project's history, where hope in a big label name turned into the most mediocre result, even compared to cases of my own promotion. And now the cherry of the cake, the label I least expected anything like this from, which screwed me over worse than all the others. I would even call it fraud, but no scammed me for money. There is no money at all. This happened morally. Yes, we are now talking about Biophaze Records, the label I mentioned earlier in the video. They once released Soviet Banging Machine and Hellcastra, two of my big dubstep tear-out singles. This year we planned a third one in spring, and then we chose August of this year as the release date. And then a wonderful event happened that stuck in my head stronger than other label f***ups. You know, I'm used to a lot in this industry and steadfastly endure rejections, delays, changed conditions, but this time I was stunned. The label where I released and have a good reputation and connection with management happily accepted the track and said the track would come out in the summer and a week-long promo campaign would start. And all would be fine, yeah? But shortly before the release, which was supposed to happen soon, I received an email saying there was semi-bad news. It states that my release would have to be postponed because producers with the nicknames Airbus and Speedzor pushed an extra charge of money to the A&R manager to extend their promo campaign up to 3 weeks. Yes, you got it right. With all due early respect to Biophaze and other musicians, this isn't the level of a label where it makes sense to make extra expenses. But the important thing here is something else entirely. Because of such a decision, my track, which was first in line for August, was swapped with this individual's collaboration. Now their track will come out earlier and mine is postponed indefinitely because they both promo overlaps my release time frame and clash with it. All they did for me in this situation was give me a strained apology. Thank you very much. I appreciate it as f***. What's the point of such apologies when I wasn't even warned or asked how I felt about it? I could have cancelled the release early and looked for another place or released myself. But now I'm just enduring moral humiliation because someone had extra cash that people were willing to throw away just to push their spot forward. Summing up everything said above, I can only come to one conclusion. Together with my nationality, the altitude towards my creativity, and the sent demos that no one even properly respond to anymore, it doesn't even get to a rejection for now. There is no point in suffering and trying to release my tracks on labels anymore. Also, to keep up with this industry routine and the speed of light, if or when my project blows up, you should know that I have no interest in turning to this who screwed me over before. You will get no profit from me, and from now on, I hope our paths won't cross in the future. I can also add as a bonus that artists who achieve even not so great success start ignoring others and refusing collaborations, sometimes directly saying they don't want to write collaborations with those who have a smaller audience, because otherwise their traffic will simply flow to the less popular artists and raise their level and status. Thanks to the honesty, by the way. But this kind of thing is already just commonplace. So I decided to talk about the most telling cases when releasing my tracks and what pitfalls might await. And there's a real danger here for beginning or continuing artists to encounter something bad and disappointing as this is, in my view, much more important. When I came into this industry and started developing in it, everything was different. Due to little experience, I got rejections and got angry, but they were fair. And when I did manage to reach someone, I get good or decent results. Soon my experience will be 8 years, then 9, then 10. But I don't feel any ease getting into certain scenes. I only encounter even more difficulties because now the meanness lies not in whether they'll take the track or not. Due to the growing quality, I get rejected less and less. But in whether I fit into someone's spontaneous plans or ambitions. Plus, there is a bias from certain individuals and factors, and this also hinders my progress. With such a confluence or circumstances, it's impossible not to conclude how much everything has changed for the worse. Also, you, of course, might have your own opinion, different, and if you're also an artist like me, please share it in the comments, I'll be interested to read it. It will be even better if we share experiences with each other and perhaps find a solution for future producers in ADM and bass music in particular. As for me, from this moment on, I definitely no longer want to hope on anyone, nor do I want to agree to conditions that sideline me in favor of someone else and make my creativity a placeholder that can be replaced by other people. Push out of the community because I am of an undesirable nationality, or stigmatize the entire Russian-speaking artist community simply because it's easier and you don't have to figure things out. Thanks for showing me the way. From now on, I'm on my own. The only ones I will gladly continue collaborating with are the cozy collective Frostfire and our Russian-speaking label Time Rage. One day you will hear about these artists, and they will shine as brightly as those you're lucky to hear today. I want to end my video with a short, I think quite powerful phrase. I love music, and I hate the modern music industry. And every year, the contrast between that I love and that I hate only grows stronger. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.